Hey, how's it going? I'm Dave Nations, your host of Realty Resilience podcast, and excited to bring a new episode here and introduce our guest, Dawn Krause. Dawn and I've known each other for, I don't know how many years now, at least since 2010, I believe. So what's that, 15 years? And
I was going to say 15 years, yeah.
Dawn has built a massive business and done, I feel like everything under the sun in real estate and super successful. So I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today, Dawn. Welcome. And if you could give us and the listeners some background on your real estate career.
Thank you, Dave. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to share and background on my real estate career. So, never in a million years did I ever think I would be in real estate. So, my background is in psychology. I was a therapist. I was going to save the world when I grew up. And through an interesting chain of events, ended up in real estate 24 years ago. So my husband, who is a first responder, so he's now a fire chief. He was a firefighter paramedic back then, so only worked 10 days a month. Had gotten his real estate license to flip homes on his days off, and we had a 14-month-old, and we were going to try for one more. And God said, "Ha ha ha! Let there be twins." And after I cried for literally 2 straight months, and they were not tears of joy, they were tears of, oh my gosh, how am I going to do 3 babies in 2 years? My husband said, because I basically would have been going back to work to pay for daycare. So he said, you know what, you're really good with people. Why don't you get your real estate license? If you sell one house a month, we'll be okay. So I was supposed to be on bed rest with the twins. Instead, I went to real estate school. They didn't have online real estate school 25 years ago. Got my license and started in real estate and ended up just like you said, kind of building a whole lot more than I ever anticipated. So I was with a traditional brokerage for the first 8 years. I came to Keller Williams in 2009, so I am 16 years at KW now. And when I came, I was a top agent in the St. Louis area, and started moving from not just the real estate team in the business, but also into leadership roles starting in 2010, which is when you and I met. So through those years, built a wonderful team. 10 years ago, brought my business together with another local successful realtor. His name's Tom Bosler. You know Tom well. Tom and I partnered 10 years ago now, so it's crazy to think it's already been 10 years. And so we are Sonera Homes now, and I'll kind of go through that journey. Our team last year served about 200 families and just over 80 million in volume. And I have a couple of different roles. So you said to kind of tell a little bit about what I've done. So I got into market center leadership. We call our offices market centers here in Keller Williams. So I own 3 KW offices. 2 of them I launched and did the majority of the recruiting for those. One of them I became the team leader of. I'm currently the general manager of 2 of my 3 market centers. I've been a regional growth director. So basically did recruiting at regional level to help recruit mega producers, independent brokerages, et cetera. And then in 2022, there was a platform called Livian, and I became the vice president of growth for Livian and did recruiting there. And I'm now part of the executive team and do recruiting for a platform called Place. So I've basically been a different version of a team leader for the last 15 years. I've done over 6,000 recruit appointments, and that is really my passion, my love, is having conversations that can really open doors to opportunities that people didn't previously know about. And those doors can oftentimes be life changing, not only for the agent, but for the rainmaker and their team members. And so that is really what drives me and energizes me.
Amazing. It's almost exhausting. Like that is impressive. And you sort of answered it. You said you did 6,000 appointments. How many people have you actually recruited? Like then from those 6,000 appointments, you know, ballpark how many people you've actually recruited? I mean, it doesn't matter. The number's going to be insane compared to I'm sure anyone else.
Oh my gosh. Well, so I would say prior to recruiting to Livian in Place, prior to platform recruiting, I bet you oh my gosh, well over 500. And then in recruiting for platforms, like now, the majority of my recruiting is all 20 million to 250 or 300 million dollar rainmakers. So they are then bringing their entire
Sure.
teams. So if you look at how many people are transitioning because of those kind of conversations and realizing what doors can be opened, it's well over 1,000, probably approaching 2,000.
That's impressive. Congrats. I
Thank
also
you.
can't help but think, I'm sure this has crossed your mind, but your previous life, you were a therapist. No
Huh,
wonder you're so good at
yes.
recruiting. I feel like it goes hand in hand. You're just helping, you're a real estate therapist, you know?
Yeah, I am a real
You
estate
just,
there. And I still, and I want to stay relevant in the industry as well. So I still work with some past clients. Now my partner Tom comes with me and he partners with me on those. But I always want to make sure that I'm staying very relevant. And it's frankly a really important part of when I'm doing the recruiting appointments with these big, 50, 100, $200 million producers is to say, I understand the challenges that you have. I live them every day as well. So it not only does it help me stay relevant with our team members in going, hey, what are the industry trends? What are the market trends? How do we help traverse them? It's also as you're growing and scaling a business, I understand what those challenges are. So just to stay relevant there as well is also really important to me.
so when you first started and you were doing this on your own, what led you in to start scaling and adding in talent in the first place
Yeah.
and building a team?
So pure necessity. So I had massively more business than I could ever handle. And so, but unfortunately, I got really really good at accruing warm bodies and not talent. And there is a massive difference between the two. They're just like there are systems for growing a real estate business. There are also systems and processes for identifying talent, getting into business with them, training them up, holding them accountable, succeeding through them. And it wasn't until I was with KW for a couple of years that I really started embracing that process and making sure that I understood it at a very, very high level. So there's a course called the Leverage Series. It used to be called Recruit, Select, Action, Train, Lead, Motivate. And I have taken that course probably at least 25 times. And every time that, and I've taught smaller, more condensed versions of it. And every time that I take it, I learn something new because I've had different experiences. I've had different, growth myself. So really always being a very consummate student has been super important to me in this growth because your business will grow to the extent that you do. And so if we ourselves stop growing as leaders, then we're going to stifle our organizations and our people.
So that being said, you started adding people out of necessity because you had so much business. That's amazing. That's not necessarily everyone's challenge. But then once you started adding people, did you have a roadmap, a plan of like, okay, so I want to build X, I want this to look like this. Did you know where you wanted to go, what you wanted it to be? You wanted to have 10 agents, 20 agents, five, oh, I don't know. But how did that look? Or was there a plan?
So the plan was to build a business using the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book and that model. So it was proven, it was tried and true, it was a blueprint, it was best practices. So that was really kind of the vision of it, and that is how I built the business. Now, when you say, okay, well, that book is there for everyone. Now, how many people actually build a business that nets $1 million? That number is very, very few. And one of the challenges and why so few do it is because it's one thing to have a plan, it's another thing to be able to adopt it and make it come to life. And you and I, Dave, as rainmakers of big businesses, we can't do that on our own. We have to have the talent and the right people that are growth minded, that are aligned with us, that have motors that can match our motor, et cetera, to be able to make that come to fruition. So having that bigger vision of building a big world and then casting that vision to attract the talent who could then come and help make it happen was paramount on that journey of growth.
So when you're casting the vision, what does that look like? Like, is that a big
The casting
broadcast to people to attract a whole bunch of people? Is that a one-to-one conversation? Is it both? Like, what does that look like?
It is both. It starts, so I prefer to cast that vision in initially in rooms, in larger rooms. So I do a good amount of teaching, coaching, that sort of thing. I'm now to the point, probably once to maybe twice a month, I'm doing some sort of speaking or teaching, and I love to do that because I love to help. And the teaching happens, as interviews happen, and people hear the way that I think, and the way that the team shows up, and that sort of thing, people are curious, and they're like, "Huh, tell me about that." And then I go into the more in-depth one-on-one conversations. So I like to do it in a bigger venue or forum, because people will either be like, "That's crazy, oh my gosh, no way," so they will either be turned off by the way that I think, or they'll be very drawn to the way that I think. And I much prefer to have those conversations with people who understand the way that I think and go, "I like that. I want to be around it." And then starts the process of understanding, are we aligned enough to actually get into business together? So it starts in the bigger venue and then goes one on one.
Okay. This is great. So yeah, I really wanted to focus on talent with you because you've obviously got a tremendous amount of experience in that space. Obviously, you've built a really big business at the same time. But I do think most agents that we talk to, their biggest, every time you go into a room full of agents and do a mastermind or anything, and you ask them what's your biggest challenge, it's always talent. Can't find any talent. Can't find any talent. You know, I mean, you've been on 6,000 appointments. I'm sure you found some talent in some of those appointments. So then, and so I think going to the events and speaking is a wonderful way to put yourself out there and then attract like-minded people. How are you getting in front? How are you getting invited to those events? Are you putting yourself out there? Like, if I'm an agent listening to this going, well, that's cool, but nobody's calling me and asking me to be on a panel. No one's calling me and asking
Here's
me to, how do I get in the room?
Here's the best thing you can do: build your business. When you build your business, you get people's attention. When you get people's attention, they want to know, how did you do that? Please come help me. And I've, because of just all the leadership stuff that I've done, that's a common question. Like, how do I start? How do I? And the biggest question to attracting, the biggest advice I would say to attracting talent is grow you and grow your business first, and people will want to know how you did that. And then when those conversations start, then that's where you have the opportunity to share not only the path that you took, but also the lessons learned, so that you can hopefully help people circumvent some of that. When people see you as the go-to for the solutions, then they want to learn more. So it really starts with building your business first, and then that also gives you influence. When you build your business and you have influence not only with the agent population, but also with the consumer, activity begets activity.
So,
And Dave, I'm
no,
sorry,
no,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
So one of the things with what the kind of the path that I've told you about in having opportunities in leadership and opening market centers and having multiple leadership roles and all of that, a lot of that started because I built a big team first. I built a big business first. Now it doesn't have to be an $80 million business for people to start having those opportunities. But when you show that you can adapt and that you can build, etc., then it opens other doors. And so again, and sometimes what'll happen is people get so stuck on the short game, and they stop looking at the long game. So they get, and what I mean by that is they get stuck transactionally, and they don't focus on building the business like a business, getting the right talent in there, et cetera. And that's what limits them. And one way to look at it is, and this is a common thought that I have these days is, as because of who I have conversations with and recruit across the country, a lot of these operators, a lot of agents out there are like, I want to do something. I want to get out of having to be so reliant on just the transactional world. Well, the only way you're going to do that and still be able to have the income to feed your family and to do the things that you want to do is the transactions have to be done by someone. If you don't want to be the one to do them, someone has to do them. And in order for that to happen, you have to go find the right someones. So we have to make the choice. I can either go chase the next $10,000 commission check, or I can go spend hours with talented people who are going to bring 100,000 in GCI or 200,000 in GCI. We just partnered with a small team that's bringing $600,000 in GCI to our organization. So I'm not out there chasing transactions. I'm out there chasing talent. I'm out there identifying and partnering with talent for a couple of reasons, Dave. It allows, I told you why I got into therapy in the first place, and also why I became a recruiter and a team leader is because I want to be able to help change people's lives. And if I'm not out there having conversations, they don't know what those opportunities are. So when I spend my time now having conversations with people that opens doors like that, it really can be very life-changing. So, but I had to make the decision that I had to be okay with maybe losing a transaction here and there until I got the right talent that could take those transactions and still serve those people.
Makes total sense. One of the things that it was more a mentor to me, but I know you worked with him. Adam Hergenrother always says, "Go wide before you go deep," right? And I think so many people want to add in other businesses and do hundreds of things and all that. And I was certainly one of them early on and didn't quite understand what he meant when he said that. But when you really hone in and you build a very successful team like you did, and you have a very strong foundation and you know what you're doing, and it gets to a point where it's running on its own, that's going deep first, and then taking on other opportunities, opening market centers, acting as a team leader, recruiting for an entire organization, whatever it is, allows you to do that, which is, again, your advice of, build your business first, and then you get those things. And I think so many people want all of the things at the same time. And it's hard because then you start spreading yourself thin, or I've done some business, so I just start bringing people in, and I've got this team, and now I go over here and I do this, but the team really isn't structured well, and then it blows up, and then people have this theory that, like, well, teams don't work, and it's like, well, they do. We just didn't run the model like you did, appropriately. So I think that's awesome that you really were able to hone in on that. I think it's great advice, building your business first and focusing on that and going deep and just honing in on it. And then once you have enough business like you did, then you can start leveraging it out. But if you're not running into the problem like you had, where you had so much business you needed the support, then you're probably not running a big enough business yet, right? Not to take on something else.
And someone may go, well, yeah, but how do I go from, I'm doing 3 million in production, or I'm doing 5 million. You're talking to someone doing 80 plus million. That, like, it's not relatable. Well, at one point I was doing 3 million, and I was doing 5 million. I was doing so no matter who's listening to this, at some point I was at that same place that they were. Now, what I would tell you, and people ask me this all the time, like, what would you do differently? Now 20 plus, so I've been in the business 24 years, been really running a team for probably about 20 of those years. It was not until more recently, probably within the last 5 years, that this concept of consolidation and partnerships and platforms and all of that really started getting a lot more legs. And now there is so much power and strength in consolidation and partnering with the right people. And now, like, Tom and I partnered 10 years ago, and that was a major change in the trajectory of things. And then Tom and I realized that we have hit a lid, we've hit a ceiling again, and that's why we ended up partnering with a platform. So I talk to people all the time. It's not that, that someone doesn't know how to grow. It's a matter of, if there's an opportunity to grow in a more accelerated manner, to do it more efficiently and to do it more profitably, people listening owe it to themselves to explore that. And then they can determine if it's the right match or not. But until they do the exploration, they could be limiting themselves.
So there's a lot here. I think that's great. And I definitely want to dive into this. First level, I guess, would be, if I'm building my team, how are you identifying who's a good fit for you, right? I know you said early on you're bringing in warm bodies, right? And then you kind of honed in on that. What are you doing? What are you using? How are you, besides just time on task and bringing in people over the years, and you're like, nah, let's not do that, and you kind of continue to hone on it. That's one way. But if I'm wanting to go out and do this now, what's the best advice that you could share with somebody to say, hey, how do I determine who's a good fit for me on my team first? And the next thing I want to dive into then is how you sort of decided when you needed to move into that platform. But if I'm just building my team, how do I determine what my talent is besides somebody that has a real estate license?
Yeah. So I would say first you need to identify who your avatar is. And when I say who your avatar is, who's the ideal person that you want to be in business with? and then determine, can I serve, how am I best going to, how am I going to bring value to that avatar? So one way that I describe my avatar is I'm first and foremost looking for someone who is hungry, humble, and intelligent. Hungry, humble, and intelligent. When I say hungry, I mean hungry for growth, hungry for learning, hungry for contributing. That's what I mean by hungry. Someone who is humble. I don't care how much success someone has had, they need to stay humble because there is always someone who has done more than them. There is always someone who has done it better than they have. And so keeping that open mind to saying, okay, I've had a level of success that has gotten me this far. I want to find the people to be around that can help take me to the next level. And that can take some humility. Sometimes people, and especially in real estate, there's a lot of egos out there. And I don't say that in a bad way, Dave. I mean, this is an industry where it can eat you up, it can chew you up and spit you out. Like, you got to have enough ego to have some tough skin. And, you know, I was just listening to on Monday, Ben Kinney, our partner here in place, had Brian Buffini on as a guest, and Brian said, I think at the end of 24 there were 1.6 million members of the National Association of Realtors, and by the beginning of 2027 it's anticipated that that will be down to 1 million. That's 600,000 people that are going to get out of the industry. And I got to tell you, I want to help people stay in, but I want to help people stay in that are ready to show up, that are going to say, show me the path on how to do it. So be hungry for growth. Be willing to change. Be humble that no matter what success that you've had, that, hey, this industry has shifted. Teach me on how I need to succeed going forward. And then the intelligent piece, that's the third one. That third characteristic of intelligence, if someone is an intelligent person, they will lean in and they will figure out how to make this happen for them. We can give them the path, we can give them the tools, we can give them the systems, but if they aren't intelligent enough to absorb it and start to use it and relate it to themselves, etc., they're going to hit a wall and they're going to go, like you said, this team thing doesn't work. Yes, it does, but you have to be willing to lean in and utilize the tools that are being given to you. So I first need to understand the characteristics, because if someone's not a character match, it doesn't matter what tools I give them, it's not going to be a match for the organization.
Let me ask you a question. I'm sitting across the table from you in an interview and you're asking me if I'm hungry and humble. I'm like, oh yeah, 100%. And you're like, okay, sounds good. Like,
I'm never going to ask you that.
how do you determine? I figured. I mean, yeah, I'm hungry. Of course, I'm hungry. You know, I haven't eaten lunch all day. No, but no, seriously. Like, I'm assuming you have specific questions that you're asking that are geared around determining their hunger or their humbleness or their intelligence, right? And then those questions, how did you determine that those were questions that were going to align with what you're looking for? Because I think that's, as I've learned, that's probably one of the biggest challenges, is that you're trying to find that person and hone in on the right questions to be asking to get the answer you really want to know, which is like, are you open-minded? Are you coachable? Oh, absolutely. And then they come in and they're like, oh, I don't want to come to training. And you're like, wait, I thought we were coachable and open-minded. What happened to that?
The greatest answer to that question, Dave, is that you don't really have to even ask the questions. And here's the reason why. Track record will speak volumes for where someone is. And so I start the conversation by, tell me about you. Tell me how long you've been in real estate. What did you do before you got into real estate? Tell me about that path, because I want to see what sort of skills that they may have that could be transferable into this industry. And now that you've been in real estate, tell me about your current business. What kind of leverage do you have? And then no matter where they are in their journey, obviously there are some successes that they've had that led them to that point. So Dave, if you were going to highlight what some of those successes are that you've done, what would you do? So they're not necessarily bragging on themselves, but they're saying, here's what the business does well. Well, a real estate agent's business is a direct reflection of them. Okay, so what successes have you had? And then I say, okay, great. Now, what opportunities do you see in your business? So things that maybe have been on your radar, and maybe you just didn't have the manpower, maybe you didn't, your P&L didn't support it yet. What are some of those opportunities or gaps? So I understand where those are their pain points, right? Those are their pain points that they have. So that's where I'm going to identify if I can serve that. And then what I'll say is, thank you so much for kind of helping me look in the rearview mirror and understand the journey that you've been on and where you are now. let's turn that to the windshield. And as we look forward, Dave, where do you see yourself? Where would you like to see you? Where would you like to see your business in, say, 3 years and in 5 years? And now this is kind of like, okay, is this someone who's thinking really small? Like I'm, making 70,000 and I want to make sure I get to 80,000. Well, is that person really growth minded? If they don't really, that's not a growth oriented type of trajectory that someone is explaining there. So I want to understand, and it's not, and some people are totally fine where they are, which is great. But in my environment, all the conversations and tools that we have are geared towards growing people. So if someone doesn't want to grow, they're probably going to be annoyed. And if they're annoyed, they're not going to see value, and then they're wasting their investment, we're wasting our investment, and it's not going to be a match. So I'm looking for track record, I'm looking for patterns, I'm looking for mindset, I'm looking for where they want to be. And during that whole thing, I'm feeling their energy, I'm looking at their facial expressions, because I want to see, first of all, is this a good human? Because I don't care how much production someone does, if they are not a good human, they're not going to be a match. So they could bring great numbers to the organization, but no numbers are worth the toxicity that a mismatched human can bring into the
I'm
organization.
assuming over 6,000 appointments, you've met some people that you're like, nope.
Absolutely, 100%, like more than what one might think. So, and I'm totally okay with gracefully exiting that. It doesn't mean that they're not a good person. It just may mean they're not a good fit for our organization. And I'll still keep good relationships and that sort of thing. But I just I have a graceful way to kind of exit that conversation. Okay. So that's first. So that's a really short snippet of kind of what the discovery conversation is. And that's probably a 30 to 40 minute conversation where I'm really getting a good feel for. And if I can determine this is the kind of human that I would want to be in business with, I see signs and trends of hungry, humble, and intelligent, and it's someone who wants to grow, then I start showing what is the value proposition of Sonera Homes powered by Place, what does that look like, etc. So I first am determining the first part, because if that's not a match, I'm going to save their time and mine.
Got it. So, excuse me, it makes sense on what you're looking for a specific person for your team. So then I understand that if I'm looking to grow my team, starting to figure out, what the personality, cultural fit, that type of stuff that I'm looking for. Then as you built your team, you and Tom then partnered together. And then from there, you guys have then, now rolled into Place. So back up to when you and Tom partnered. At what point in your business did you decide, hey, I need to bring in an amazing guy like Tom into my world, and we can do even more together? Because I think, again, from a mindset standpoint, as you mentioned, most agents are like, well, I'm not going to do that, and I got to split this and that. And it always goes to the splits, right? So it's like, I'm not giving up the money or whatever it is, or now both of us are going to do this. It's going to get messy. But obviously you think pretty big, and you were able to put that together. What led to that? The first partnership?
Pain.
Okay. What type of pain were you in at that point?
So I was not able to find someone that could be an extension of me and treat my customers with the same heart as I did. Now, it's not that there aren't great agents that do a great job. I have very high standards in the experience that we give our customers, and in the level of communication, et cetera. And so Tom and I, the way that this happened, Dave, is when I actually was team leader of the Chesterfield KW office, my job was to recruit mega agents, right? And so I started doing some coaching with Tom. He ended up coming over to Keller Williams, and then he and I were both runners. And so we were training for half marathons. And so when you're out running for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours at a time, you talk about a lot of stuff. And we kept seeing these themes in holes in our businesses. And we finally said, well, and what I needed, he had, and what he needed, I had. And so we kept saying, gosh, if we could bring our businesses together, we could be unstoppable. We could really change some lives. And after a year and a half of that, I pulled him into the office one day and I said, dude, we're either going to shit or get off the pot. We're going to stop talking about this, or we're going to figure it out. And frankly, Dave, this was 10 years ago. Everybody said, don't do it. Partnerships don't work. No way. And so guess what that did? We're like, game on. We're going to make it work. Fired us up.
How many
Now,
miles did
here's
you
what
run together till you guys finally put this thing together?
Oh, a lot, a lot of miles. So one does not have to run for hours and
Yeah.
hours and hours, but it is the conversation to make sure it's the right
Well, what you
partnership.
did do is
And
you guys worked together and you built that relationship over time. While in your case, yes, it was running from time to time. But what I think people don't also realize is how much time you guys spent together and creating a relationship and really getting to know each other in order for that to happen. And I'm highlighting that because I think a lot of people find somebody like, oh, you got a license? Come on over. Oh, this guy's going to be a rock star. They're going to be amazing. Based on what? Like you just met him 10 minutes ago. Like, how do we know? And or they
that's
haven't spent
right.
enough time to really know are they going to be a good match, especially in your case when you're going to then partner up with them and not just
Yeah.
bring them in and here you sell whatever. So I think that that's an important piece. That is the amount of time that you guys spent really getting to know each other, understanding each other's businesses, seeing what was necessary to help each other out, and that it really made sense and going through all that before you jumped into business together.
Absolutely. And then the other thing that we had to do, Dave, and this is a big part of why partnerships don't work, is that people are stepping all over each other. They don't have clarity on their lanes and who's doing what. And then the other piece of it, which comes from all that time spending relationship, is there has to be trust. If you keep track, and another reason why partnerships don't work is because at some point, if one partner feels like, well, I'm doing 52% of the work and he's only doing 48%, then all of a sudden there's resentment and there's all this kind of stuff. And a coach told Tom and I probably about a year into our partnership, there was a little bit of that, like, well, but I'm doing more of this and I'm doing more of that. And he said, stop. He said, here's the deal. Do you guys trust each other? Yes. Okay, we wouldn't have partnered if we didn't. And he said, you have to stop keeping score. If you keep score, this will never work. You have to trust that Dawn is going to do her lane. Dawn, you have to trust that Tom is going to do his lane. And I promise it will all equal out. And so we really took that to heart. And I'll tell you, Tom's in charge of like the day-to-day production of our agents and working on the majority of our database. And I focus on bringing quality people to the organization. So the majority of our transactions, 200 plus families, I don't touch most of those. That's Tom. So someone could go, well, Tom deserves more. Well, but my area is identifying talent and using my 6,000 recruit appointments to know how to find the right people to bring into the organization that are exponential growth. Well, Tom doesn't have that background in training. So this is where we trust that he trusts that I'm going to go do mine. He's going to go do his, and that's why the partnership has been so successful. So the track record, the trust, the relationship, and something else, Dave, that's really, really important is, the concept of consolidation has been talked about more and more over the last couple of years. And if you really look at who are the biggest and the best in the industry and in multiple industries, look at Gary Keller, look at Ben Kinney, Chris Suarez, Adam Herger, all these people that are the top of the creme de la creme in their industry, none of them own businesses on their own. Ask Gary Keller how many businesses he owns all by himself. Ask Ben Kinney and Chris Suarez how many businesses they own all by themselves. The answer is none. Partnership is how people can make and build bigger worlds. It just has to be the right partners.
I was talking last week about this actually, and it was mentioned that there's not a single millionaire in the world that owns 100% of something. That the reason
Bingo.
they're there is because they've partnered, they've shared in the wealth. They own 7% of this business, but it's a multi-million-dollar business, but they don't own 100% of it. And so, yeah, to your point, you're going in order to get to where you want to go, you're going to have to bring in the right people. One other thing I wanted to mention is your line about don't keep score is really good life advice. It's not even just with the real estate team, but that's good life advice for if you're married. And my wife and I actually established that very early on. And it's when people used to ask us that when you go to a wedding, like, what's your advice? Don't keep score. It's the best thing you can do, because if you're getting like, well, I did this, you didn't do that. Like, I did the laundry today. How come you didn't do the laundry? Whatever. It'll
Yes.
never work out. And I think this is, while it's not a marriage, it is a partnership, and it's a business related thing that you need to make sure you're on the same page and you guys understand that. And I think that that's tremendous advice. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
So then, okay, so you and Tom partnered up together, and then eventually
Yes.
now you've rolled in with Place, which is a massive platform here around the country. and something I've learned a lot about as well is we've also recently done that. So
Yes.
at what point do you determine that that was then necessary? Because, you went from solo to building a team to then a partnership to now taking the team and putting it in with a bigger partnership to replace, again, same type of conversation. I feel like where as a big organization, big teams, whatever it is, like the challenge always comes back to the economics. But what makes you decide, like, yep, this is necessary, I got to get there? Is it pain again?
I was just going to say, remember when you said, why did I start a team? And I said, pain. Why did I do a partnership? Pain. Now, here's a common misconception. Sometimes people think, oh, you only partner because something's broken. And that's not true. People, in fact, a lot of people have really, really healthy businesses when they partner. However, no, we all have challenges in our businesses. The hue of those challenges depends on the season of the business. And what we know is that for rainmakers, for those who have teams, et cetera, there really are five main challenges that we deal with. They're challenges irrelevant of brokerage. And it really focuses on attracting talented agents and operational staff. Number two is getting people into productivity, like increasing net per agent productivity. And then if we are attracting talented people and helping them become more productive, retaining them and developing them. And those are the growth side of a business. And then as the business is growing, if you don't have top level operational systems and efficiencies, the growth will break the business and the people will leave you anyway. And then as your business grows, you need a full set of business services like a finance department and a marketing department and an HR and legal and agent productivity and onboarding and marketing and technology. And most of us piecemeal that together by having lots of vendor services. Like, I'm going to hire this vendor. Guess what? If vendors are getting your money, they don't really care about the success that you have or not. They just want your subscription. They just want the contract, right? A partner, your success is their success. And when those five challenges that we as rainmakers have are solved, it then opens up the opportunity for a sixth opportunity, which is income diversification. Wildly important, because what we've been hearing for many years, and Gary Keller's been saying over and over again, is that most realtors, the majority of their money comes from their transactions. Well, when the industry shifts, like it has, like last year we ended at what, the lowest number of transactions since 1995. So when the industry shifts like that, their income is massively impacted. So having other streams of income through ancillary businesses that we fund a ton of money to them, or funnel a ton of money to them anyway, those kind of opportunities. Well, when we've got those five problems solved and the ancillary businesses, guess what that also does? It opens up opportunities for our people. So the things that Place solves for me as a rainmaker, I then bring that solution on a local level. So agents who are an individual agent or a small team, they want more production. They need more talent in their world. They need high level efficiencies. So we solve those same problems on a local level. And then how do we retain them and grow them? We create wealth building opportunities for them. And so that was the why behind partnering with Place, is that they offer those solutions that our next level growth was those pain points we were experiencing, and we were still growing and doing really well. So it wasn't about, did we stop knowing how to grow? No, it was, does partnering with Place allow us to accelerate that, change more lives, do it more efficiently, more profitably? And I would tell you, yes, 100%.
For sure. I think that that's what people need to understand is the benefits that you're getting, and what is it doing for you. I think everyone looks at the immediate bottom line and goes, oh my God, I can't afford that. But can you afford not to? And is what you have now, can other people compete with that? Right? Like if I'm going to come and interview for your team and you have all of these things and then I go to the next team, do they have the same benefits that you're now providing? No, right? So now it
Right.
brings you to another level, and you've already got a top team, and now you've just made it that much bigger and better. So it makes a ton of sense. Again, it's just about, I guess, how people think and how they look at things. And I think you're also being very honest about when you hit your pain points and knowing, like, okay, it's like that stair step, right? Like, okay, I've hit this level, I can't get to the next level anymore unless I do something different. And in this case, it was partnering up again, right? And bringing in a whole new system. And you always heard it was either a people problem or a system problem. And in this
Yes.
case, I would call this a system problem, right? I guess, and that partnering with that platform provided a whole nother set of systems, tools, resources, everything that you couldn't do.
It actually solved for the people and the systems problem because the bigger world attracted the higher caliber and higher level person as well. The other thing to keep in mind, Dave, is another reason for the partnership is because there is a difference between growing a business and scaling a business. And let me explain. So if we look at the millionaire real estate agent budget model, and the budget model basically says if you run a best practices business at these certain production levels or GCI levels, here is roughly what your net operating income is going to be. So if you look at that chart, as the business grows and the GCI grows, what happens to the actual profit margin percentage? What happens to that? It goes down, right? So if you look at it, now the dollars should go up because it's a smaller percentage of bigger GCI, but the percentage goes down. That's growing a business. When you have economies of scale and efficiencies and partnership, et cetera, your top line revenue can grow and your profit margin does not have to shrink because a business gets more expensive the bigger it gets unless you have economies of scale, which is what a partnership affords.
Perfect. Nailed it. That was great. This is awesome. So much good information, as I expected it would be. We're starting to wrap up on time. One of the things I love to end with is tell me what's the funniest thing that's ever happened to you in real estate? Maybe on a showing, maybe at a listing appointment, maybe on a recruiting appointment, but something that's, that you still remember. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened.
Oh my gracious. Well, I don't have an exact scenario off the top of my head, but what I will say is that so I have 3 children. My daughter is 25 years old now, and I have identical twin boys that are 23, and my twins are autistic. And so the twin that is the lower functioning, we have full guardianship of him. He'll live with us forever. He is super candid. And I've always been very, he works for the real estate team. He comes to the office. He has shown more houses than most humans probably ever will, even in real estate, because he just comes with me. He can't drive. He can't any of that. And he is the most candid, raw, hilarious human being because he will say exactly what is on his mind. And he has gone into homes and just openly talked about how absolutely ugly something is. It would be so stupid for someone to consider buying a house like that. I mean, it's just, and you're like, oh my Lord. So but you know what that is, Dave? It's real.
Yeah.
It's just
Honest.
real, right? Like he's one of the most amazing humans. My good friend Rebecca Rose says, I want to be Gus someday because he lives his best life every day because he doesn't care what people think. He just says exactly what's on his mind. And having that kind of raw and innocent genuineness is just refreshing.
Yeah, you don't see that very often.
No, you
I'm just
don't.
trying to picture what the showings are like when you're just like, this place is terrible. And you're like, oh, I liked it. And you're like, no.
Hilarious. Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, it's a hoot. Never a dull moment, Dave.
Well, I appreciate you coming on today. For anyone that's listening or watching, how can people find you if they want to learn more about your team or how to, get into more talent recruiting, acquisition, anything real estate, right? If they want to find you, what's the best way to find you?
So best way to find me 2 ways. Dawn at place.com. So DAWN at place.com. My cell phone is 636-346-6766. Again, 636-346-6766. And Dave, if I could just leave one piece of advice as we part ways. I was recently asked this on another podcast that I did, and it was kind of like, I hadn't actually thought about that. But yet it came right off of my tongue. The question was, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone who is wanting to grow? And my response was, say yes to the conversation. And what I meant by that is that I think people too often think, oh, that's going to be a waste of my time, or, oh, I'm not going to do that. I already know how to do X, Y, and Z. And there's a book that I was given years ago called When God Winks at You, and it's about coincidences. And it says that 75% of the time when a coincidence happens, people go, oh, that was weird, and they just go on with life. But if you actually stop and go, did that coincidence happen? Did that person or that situation come into my life for a reason? And be open to the conversation, be open to what that door could lead you to. Now, what I would be caution is don't say yes to every conversation, because there are some people that have one-sided, like they just want it about them. But if there's a situation that really grabs your attention and you're like, why did that happen? And someone says, let's meet, let's have a conversation, say yes to the conversation, because a lot of the stuff that has happened in my world and my journey that I just told you is because I stayed curious and I said yes to conversations, not having any idea if anything would even come out of them. But you know what I also did, Dave, is I looked at the track record of the person asking for a conversation.
There you go. All comes back to the track record. Okay, well, that's really good advice. I appreciate that, and I would agree with that. Just thinking through my own journey, that I think saying yes and being open-minded to conversations will certainly get you further along. So, Dawn,
Right
thank you
on.
so much for joining us today. Thank you for everyone out there listening to another episode of Realty Resilience. Stay tuned for another episode. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.